Chapter 4. The Thought System. In 2011, shortly after quitting my job to prove to myself I could live off thought and universal law alone, I incorporated an organization called FREE, or Freedom Rooted in Empowerment and Enlightenment. I achieved a degree of enlightenment early on in my spiritual journey based on my definition: a personal relationship, including direct communication with the living God and knowing that God exists without a doubt. Again, either I am insane or enlightened. There is no middle ground. I was hardwired and preconditioned for this journey, but all can uncover the truth. Early on, I knew I was on a path of enlightenment because of my internal and external experiences. I once heard that signs and symbols were for the conscious mind, and I was in daily communication with God through internal phenomenon and external signs. A couple of small examples are that I would often hear high-pitched tones within my mind to bring me into the moment if I listened to the parasite. Also, numerical signs would guide me frequently, with 6 or 6-9 being the ultimate sign not to move forward with the decision. These examples are just scratching the surface of the many ways God will communicate, lead, and guide the willing. However, in the early stages of awakening, God will slowly introduce you into different communication channels while still existing as the separated self, because it can frighten the untrained mind. The parasite will try to convince you that you should fear God, entering your mental space, and attempt to trick you into believing you are losing yourself while evolving. In the separation, it's natural to resist change and fear the unknown, and the enemy will attempt to use your fear against you. Moreover, the misconception that spiritual evolution limits your free will or that you have anything to fear is the furthest thing from the truth for multiple reasons. First, God and spirit will usually only enter your consciousness with permission after you have expressed interest and are seeking knowledge. Second, when you exist as the self, the parasite is the narrator of the mind mostly. So when your Holy Spirit or God enters, you replace the enemy with the Savior. Essentially, you are functioning in the same way as the listener, except you are replacing error with truth. Third, in actuality, you are a derivative of God and Spirit, hence the Trinity. So if and when they enter your mental space, it is you connecting with yourself. In addition to revelation and synchronicity, astrology is another path to seek God's guidance. Although I have never sought astrological knowledge thoroughly, I am positive that God uses the universe to guide every individual. Extraordinary evidence of God's omnipotence and omniscience is directing our lives with the stars. I have always sought information and direction within the spiritual realm because direct revelation has been my path. Still, I recommend new seers track their birth and use ancient astrological wisdom to help attain divine instruction for their lives while working towards mental silence or establishing an interpersonal relationship with the Most High. However, be on guard because the calendar has been intentionally altered over time. Sometimes following the instructions of God doesn't initially pan out the way you intend, But the process of allowing God's will to supersede your own happens with time and faith. Eventually, you will find that God will not only lead you to what you desire, but will also guide you away from harmful circumstances that you could not have foreseen. Nonetheless, you can only encounter what you are open to receiving. Direct revelation and internal communication are only possible if you have accepted your divine nature and understand you are one with God. Synchronicity and the ability to be led by signs and symbols is only plausible when you believe in a higher power. That is not to say that signs will not exist, but you will not be fully open to accept the reality of the experience. Lastly, astrological guidance will only be useful if you have the discipline to execute. So you can see the truth is somewhat irrelevant in the coordination of your life goals and purpose if your thought system is contrary to its functioning. Although universal laws are always true, you must remember that you are outside of time and space and imposing your will upon the universe. Your reality is what you make it, and it is dependent on your system of thought. After quitting my job to start this journey officially, I lost my apartment, car, and had no income. I was bewildered, angry, and blasphemous at times. In short order, regardless of my spiritual experiences, I went from meditation and seeking God's direction to questioning the power of my thoughts and God's will in certain moments. The more I questioned my understanding, the more pessimistic and fearful I became. It was not just a parasite, but my own selfish and angry mentality that allowed trial and tribulation to disrupt my spiritual growth. I would be back on my feet within 5 months and have been able to live off thought alone from 2011 until now. But those first few months were some of my worst days. Eventually, things came together and I made money developing different businesses, partaking in entrepreneurial endeavors, and provided a decent living for my family. But I rarely worked hard. Every opportunity flowed to me, and every time I was able to earn a living, giving something away with no upfront cost or for free until delivery. I started in the sustainability space with commercial solar, photovoltaic development, and LED lighting upgrades. A few days after leaving the salaried company I was with, I received a flyer for a free 2-week solar development class. The instructor spent 2 weeks explaining how we could profit from solar with financial incentives instead of making people pay for it. Around the same time, I visited the company's market vice president I left to discuss spirituality. He had a friend in town that gave me a fancy suitcase filled with LED lighting samples. He told me about how incredible Missouri lighting rebates were and showed me how to perform arbitrage by buying material directly from China. Within months, I closed my first commercial solar, photovoltaic, and LED lighting deal and had a check for over $100,000 with a little over $40K in profit. I lived comfortably off small to medium-sized lighting projects for well over a year. When God instructed me to quit my job, I was obedient. However, The financial losses took me a while to recover from emotionally, but I learned that faith comes through patience in the short term. Often God will wait until the very last moment to deliver you from a situation, just so that you will not take credit for the miracle and cannot doubt that it was in fact God that saved you from the circumstance. Just because your thoughts are not manifesting at the pace you would like doesn't mean you're not creating your future. In 2013, I got a call from a commercial real estate developer about completing a solar and LED project on one of his properties. The developer lived in Los Angeles but owned apartment complexes in multiple cities. He got my number from the gentleman that gave me the LED lighting samples a couple of years prior. I informed him of the no upfront cost model I was using in Missouri, with clients paying a monthly lease payment based on energy savings. I flew out to LA to meet him, and we decided to pursue this business model throughout the continental US. We did this until 2016, before the reduction of the energy rebates. For years, I would sell or employ salespeople to offer multiple products and services, but the pattern was consistent. I wouldn't have to take any money up front. I was able to close deals with relative ease. I never got rich, but I did $2 million in sales in 2017, contracting with a large company, and over $1 million in sales in 2018 as a small business owner. I use the term working very loosely because I was living free. I stayed up late, woke up when I was ready, went on appointments sporadically, and lived a carefree lifestyle. I was content with the simple things in life because I came from a very humble, lower middle class upbringing. During my spiritual journey, I often traveled, lived in nice homes, and drove decent cars, but was far from wealthy. I lived off the law of attraction, but rarely, if ever, combined will or effort with universal law. I believe that if I had combined action with visualization, I could have accomplished a lot more. I rarely visualized, attempted to create more, or worked hard to improve my financial situation because I was content with doing very little and living very well. I would often tell people that I retired in 2011. Over that period, God was my provider, without question. All of my opportunities were random or coincidental, and God made it a point to wait until the last minute to bless me during transitionary periods so that I couldn't question the source. Nonetheless, over that time, I did improve my habits drastically. I didn't sleep with any other women besides my wife, stopped drinking liquor, and became a vegetarian. I meditated frequently, controlled the brain, evolved mentally, and interacted with God constantly. God would bring people into my life to counsel spiritually and inspire me to direct my path by practicing what I preached. I helped a couple of intelligent but depressed atheists or agnostic develop hope along with countless homeless people I would meet in passing. Although I never heard from most of the homeless again, I did meet a young man named Alexander that I spoke with for about 20 minutes that called around 6 months later to tell me he found a job and an apartment after we spoke. It was a proud moment. I remember telling him that to get off the streets, all he had to do was keep a singular thought and repeat it often, and everything else would fall into place. The thought was, I will get off the street easily. Along with the homeless ministry, there were also a couple of divine relationships created on my path with two next door neighbors struggling with mental health, anxiety, and sorrow. They were in very different stages in their lives when we met at two different periods in my life, but both were seeking truth and open to adopting a new train of thought. As I helped them and imparted spiritual knowledge, I was also helping myself by reaffirming my beliefs during difficult times. I went into greater detail of my spiritual journey and told them things they had a hard time believing, such as thinking is a choice. I think it was an obvious sign that our paths crossing was destiny because we were neighbors and both of their birthdays were on the same day as my wife, who experienced comparable emotions at times. For instance, in 2013, my wife was in a bank robbery while pregnant with our second child and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I asked her to quit her job to prove that we could live comfortably together on thought alone. She quit, but still struggled with fear associated with the robbery for some time until she decided to start meditating and showed enormous improvements within the first few months. We worked vigorously on changing her thoughts, ideas, and how she processed information to discipline the subconscious. She stopped taking medication and hasn't shown any signs of PTSD for years. I knew that as soon as she committed to meditation, her mind would begin to transform, and so will you. Most individuals would agree that their thoughts affect their feelings, mood, and attitude, while others accept that their thoughts influence their experiences. We've established that thinking is a powerful process and is within the spiritual realm where matter forms, since you are spiritual beings. You must also consider that the body consists of electricity in the physical world, and there are billions of electrons traveling within. There is a magnetic field that surrounds each individual. The brain is filled with electricity and works as a satellite, sending out thought waves and acting as a magnet attracting things. If anyone questions the enormous amount of power within the human body, consider that Einstein created one of the most powerful weapons in history by splitting a single atom. The body has billions of particles within, and if you rearrange the equation, E equals mc squared, you find that the speed of light is just scratching the surface of the power within you. Unfortunately, it has been hypothesized by many scientific minds that humans only use a small percentage of the brain. That is because, since the separation from God, the parasite has been using us, limiting the grandeur of thought, affecting the way you think, and inducing self-identification. In any given moment, spiritual beings can choose what and how to think. For instance, if I ask you to repeat, "I am God," 10 times in a row, you can stop listening to the parasite and repeat it. Continue with your current train of thought or psychoanalyze the request. You always have authority over the brain in the present moment and can change the quality and quantity of thought at will. The ability to affect and determine what you think, how you think, what you identify as when you're thinking, and what you believe about the power of thought comprises the thought system. For example, one can have an optimistic thought system while identifying as an insignificant human being whose thoughts have no consequence. In turn, another spiritual being could be a pessimistic thinker while acknowledging their divinity, believing their thoughts are powerful, but unable to stop thinking negatively. The thought system is your relationship, understanding, knowledge, and interaction with the mental processes that govern your experiences. Through meditation, mental silence, and God's guidance and spiritual phenomenon, you will be introduced to the truth and have the ability to rebuild a thought system on a solid foundation. When you are fully aware that you are a spiritual being, you may not question that thoughts are powerful, but will have to develop the faith to set new limits and engage in active spiritual warfare with the parasite to command and recondition the nature of your thoughts. Also, even after witnessing the truth in the silence, it is still a challenge to identify as a spiritual being when living amongst others who will intrinsically reduce you to the physical specimen they see and believe themselves to be. The thought system is also dependent on the quality of ideas you've accepted into the subconscious over time. Suppose you have entertained ideas of confidence, bravery, enthusiasm, determination, and a conquering state of mind. In that case, your thought system will be optimistic about your ability to live, create, and endure life as it comes, regardless of your beliefs about thought power. On the other hand, if you've conditioned the subconscious into ideas of weakness, fragility, fear, and limitation, then you will have a pessimistic interpretation of most outcomes and will draw negativity to yourself, even if you do identify as a spiritual being. Your emotions, attitude, life experiences, and mental health are all dependent on your thought system. As situations come up, the subconscious mind acts as a machine, offering conditioned responses and assumptions that determine how you will think and feel about each of them. The parasite will be active regardless of the thought system and will entertain you with egoic or judgmental thoughts and mental illustrations to influence you. The thought system can undergo an extremely turbulent experience when you question something or someone you identify with or possess. For example, you can have a best friend from college that you haven't spoken to for years, but many will still find themselves feeling empty if they find out that person no longer considers them a friend. You may feel like you've lost something, even if you haven't had it for as long as you can remember. That is due to the emotional detachment that you're unwillingly undergoing in the thought system. To reconfigure your thought system, you must make a conscious effort to evaluate how you think, what you think, that you think, if it's you or the parasite thinking, as well as what you identify as when thinking. Your understanding of the truth and your relationship to God is essential because it determines what you believe about the power of thought. When the spiritual being is aware of its true nature, it is easier to have faith in the manifestation of your creations. However, if you doubt your divinity, then your thoughts will have a more challenging time bearing the figurative fruit you intend to manifest. For this reason, your thoughts will only exercise as much power as the faith you can realize. The parasite may also follow your thinking with harmful or disruptive ideas like, I could never accomplish, or I'm a failure, that will pull up the thought seeds that you have planted. Due to universal law, you will undoubtedly reap what you have sown. The thought system also determines how you perceive or digest information, independent of reality and truth. You instinctually make assumptions based on subconscious beliefs, and the parasite will attempt to make you reject information that challenges ideas you identify with subconsciously. Anytime your false identity is threatened, the brain fears you will awaken and seek its elimination. The parasite works continuously to entrap you in any thought system that keeps you listening to it and not seeking mental silence. Silent meditation is powerful and can change your life if you affirm positivity or clear your mind for 30 minutes a day. However, to systemically change your thought system takes a controlled effort and analysis of how the mind works at all times. At the beginning of your journey, the parasite will always be present. Still, if you identify as a spiritual being and determine to stop accepting certain types of thoughts into the subconscious, the devil will oblige so as not to shine a light on itself. The darkness will always flee when the light is present. For instance, if you decide today you will no longer think things like, I hate myself. Initially, you may have a hard time, but with persistence, the thoughts will decrease and cease if you work to accept that the enemy is most likely stimulating the thinking. It can be more difficult to actively alter the thought system during times of pain or anger, but it is even more essential to control your mental state in these situations. Over time, God has revealed that our thought system and how we approach thinking altogether needs to transform to pursue atonement collectively. That is one reason the Bible says we are born in sin. Currently, the earthly being thinks in a reactionary thought system and interacts with the external environment in a retrogressive manner, meaning, as you ponder any situation, you think about how to handle it instead of handling it with thought. Most people see life as something that is happening to them, and they use instinctual, habitual, or conditioned information when thinking about current circumstances, versus understanding that your past thinking is responsible for the current situation, and what you're thinking at that moment will influence the future. However, it's imperative to recognize the distinction of not only regulating how you think, but the actual internal dialogue. For example, suppose someone found themselves in a compromising situation. In that case, they should not react to the event and entertain thoughts like, I have to find a way to solve this problem. They should think as if they are creating at that moment with a thought like, the perfect solution will present itself quickly. That may be a very different way of interacting with the environment. Still, the essential difference is understanding that thought in and of itself is the root cause, and you are creating the effects with every word you ponder. Furthermore, since no two situations are the same, conditioned assumptions may be harmful. You're putting yourself at a significant disadvantage by not coordinating with the all knowing, all powerful source ready to lead you. For example, many believe they need a job to take care of themselves. So if they become unemployed, they might think things like, I have to find a job to keep my home. Since you are a spiritual being created in the divine image of God, if you think that you need a job to pay your mortgage, then you will. However, the correct way to handle any situation in life is with a proactive thought system. Proactive thought is to intentionally speak into existence what you would like to manifest while having faith in your divine right to affect reality. You should approach every life event like there is an infinite number of ways for your desired outcome to manifest, and know that you affect the situation directly as soon as you start thinking. It's unnecessary to deliberate on how to manifest anything because your nature is creation. When you think proactively, you allow the universe to mold itself to your will with an infinite amount of options that lead to your desired state. An example would be to think, I will pay my mortgage easily. You should not give any specific limitation to how you will accomplish anything, because in doing so, you are restraining yourself to a finite means to achieve the desired outcome. I have thought this way for all types of things and do my best to train my children to use proactive thought frequently. In separation, it may appear to be an unnatural way of thinking. You and the parasite may reject it at first because reactive thinking is instinctual and passed down generationally. However, if you make a conscious effort to think proactively, it will prove its accuracy. Keep in mind that the level of manifestation, or what you will attract, is also dependent on your entire thought system, along with God's will and timing. The primary objective must be a sustained practice of meditation in darkness and silence, along with the pursuit of mental silence, so that you can see the enemy plainly and eventually discover that you are within and one with universal consciousness. Then you will enhance the quality of your thoughts and build the necessary faith to create your destiny. I suggest that you start with small things like finding keys or remote controls. If you lose or misplace something, do your best to practice proactive thought and think, I will find the item easily and quickly while you're looking for it. The secret is understanding that you're not only manipulating subatomic particles, which are the building blocks of the universe when you think, but also that the Holy Spirit is within and can inspire, inform, and reveal universal knowledge at that moment. The parasite will undoubtedly do its best to confuse or combat this new system of thought immediately. A proactive thought system will cause the parasite great fear and will put it on guard. It's not just what you think that frightens the enemy, but that you are also building a habit of consciously identifying as a spiritual being while thinking. Remember that the power in manifestation is a supreme understanding of what you are. The parasite is afraid that you will weaken its hold over you when you make a habit of proactive thinking. Proactive thought is one of the main ingredients in the secret sauce to building faith that you are a spiritual being affecting the world rather than a human being undergoing the fear, stress, and anxiety associated with the world affecting you. A reactive thought system inevitably leads to panic to some degree because of the underlying assumption that outcomes are beyond your control. A reactive thought system is one in which you do not hold your thoughts to the highest regard and ponder different results and conclusions indiscriminately, believing that actions matter most. While efforts are essential due to the universal law, consider that no human activity has ever taken place before someone thought it so. Also, with reactive thinking, you are an insignificant creature trying to control the external environment, all while believing outcomes may be beyond your control. With proactive thinking, you are an infinite spiritual being, proactively creating reality in real time while imposing your will onto the world. Another limitation of a reactive thought system is you are confining your actions and results to your finite experiences, intellect, reason, or intelligence. However, proactive thought and the acceptance that you must think the precise words of what you want to see come to pass without deliberating on how it will happen gives God the ability to create your desired outcome without limitation. You must train the subconscious mind to think proactively at all times through repetition. I was a huge fan of Kobe Bryant as a kid because I hadn't seen a will to be great like his. How do you think Kobe thought as a child? Do you think he pondered being great and wondered if he would be in the NBA? Or do you think he was training his subconscious to expect and assume that greatness was already his? Proactive thought cultivates faith through experience because you will undoubtedly be a witness that it works. You will accept the truth easier through revelation rather than words. When experiencing hypersensitive situations, triggering reactions in the brain like addiction and obesity, proactive thought can expedite your recovery. Do not limit yourself to ideas about when, where, what, or how things can happen. You just need to think that it is already so. If you are not fully aware of your spiritual nature, God left the Holy Spirit to assist you in atonement as well as the completion of your goals. All you need to think is, I will stop using drugs quickly and easily, or I will lose weight quickly and easily, and concentrate on holding that idea in the mind until you believe it. Keep in mind that this is not as simple as it appears. The parasite will be the figurative monkey on your back, telling you differently and trying to influence your actions. Suppose you have yet to accept your spiritual nature. In that case, you will struggle more at first because the subconscious mind has a habit of reactive thinking. So programmed thoughts and feelings may work against you initially, in addition to the parasite. Regardless, it's imperative to repeat proactive thoughts even when using drugs, eating the wrong food, or doing something contrary to your goal. At that moment, you start to create a new thought system, recondition the subconscious mind, and build the will to change your future actions. Before you can do different things, you have to think a different way. Changing the thought system takes time, but it's essential to renew the soul and transition to new mental processes and actions. By no means am I trying to imply that you can't stop actions cold turkey, because all things are possible through you. However, if you are struggling to remove or create anything in life, reactive thinking will make obstacles. On the other hand, reactive thinking can bring about desired outcomes through confidence, critical thinking, analysis, logic, and reason. Besides, even when you live as a spiritual being, you will continue to entertain reactive thoughts until you fully atone. At atonement, it is undeniable that your thoughts are powerful, and you will only think definitively because you identify as God. There is no reason to deliberate minor details in atonement because you are within omnipotence, so all knowledge is within you. However, as you work towards atoning and attempt to change the way you think, act, or live, words like need, want, and try should be used sparingly. In heaven or atonement, you don't experience thoughts like fear, desire, and greed because these motives result from generational identification with individuality and the parasite. When you're attempting to recondition the mind, you must speak with the authority of God and recognize that you are affecting time and space. If you're trying to accomplish something, then it may not happen. The spiritual being understands that most of what you could ever want or need, you can attract with time, faith, labor, and patience. Another critical component of training the thought system is repetition. When you consciously repeat anything in the mind, you are hypnotizing the subconscious into accepting, then repeating the idea, much like a tape recorder. Hypnosis is as real as subliminal messages, and the unguarded subconscious is susceptible to it, some more so than others. Proactively hypnotizing the subconscious to adopt a proactive thought system through repetition is essential to ensure that others who knowingly take advantage of the subconscious's fragility are not hypnotizing you without your consent. The parasite seeks to control you by any means necessary, including powerful parasitic-driven entities and individuals. The brain also influences the central nervous system, so you and the parasite affect the body through the mind. During challenging or strenuous moments, you should make it a point to repeat, "I feel good," over 20 times during meditation. You will hear the relaxation building in your voice as you repeat the affirmation. You will transform your emotional energy in real time. Whether you prefer the term emotions, energy, or vibrations, you influence your feelings over time through the subconscious and the thought system. When you choose to hold a particular thought in mind for an extended period of time, you alter hormones and brain chemicals to influence how you feel. When experiencing anxiety or panic, you should repeat, "I am calm." When you're angry or sad, repeat, "I feel great," and so on. Your body and mind are entirely under your control if and when you take back the reins from the parasite and think proactively. In regards to attracting external objects, repetition may or may not expedite the delivery of any item. For instance, repeating "a car will come to me now" will not make a car magically appear in your driveway. However, It will change you and condition you to change your thoughts, beliefs, and actions to manifest the car when it is time. Mental repetition, like thinking, can be a great asset or a dangerous liability. Today, it is plausible that you already have conditioned harmful beliefs or identity attachments that you're continually building into the subconscious, affecting the thought system through internal dialogue. You have all accepted some damaging ideas as truth, some individuals more than others. For instance, as children, we were all constantly bombarded with the question, what are you going to be when you grow up? However, what you do for a living has nothing to do with what you become. Regardless of your profession, you are what you've always been and were never going to be anything else. Whether you carry out God's preordained purpose for your life or through free will chart a new course, you can identify with numerous identities, but you will never change your divine nature. Identification with thought constructs or mental attachments, like I am what I do, creates the potential for pain. When coupled with repetition in the subconscious, it can cause an identity crisis. Small things can have a significant effect. For instance, one might relish the idea of dedicating themselves to dentistry and have a sense of pride identifying as I am a dentist, until someone confronts them with the idea that they're not a real doctor. If they accept the criticism as accurate or entertain the thought, they could regret years of schooling, work, time, and find themselves suffering mentally from the identity. A profound example of how mental repetition of negative beliefs can contribute to cultural decadence on a large scale is the subconscious identification with the word nigga. Many not only identify with the word, the term real nigga is considered a rite of passage they must always strive to perpetuate. While the idea of what it means to be a real nigga is defined by the individual, it is a litmus test with a declining grading scale that appears to change with every new generation. The word can serve as a term of endearment or put down instantaneously, signifying that love and self-hate are within the ideology. Moreover, the word repeatedly penetrates the thought system through music, television, and conversation. Some children are socially conditioned into identification with the identity before they can speak. That is dangerous because negative music continuously alters and redefines the actions associated with the identity. Unlike identification with other ethnic terms, the subconscious changes often and redefines itself with different activities, often harmful due to the identity's fluidity. Identification with anything besides a spiritual being is dangerous. Still, some conditioned identities can have adverse long-term effects that contribute to societal decay across generations. We've established that the thought system affects human feelings, including fear, depression, anxiety, joy, and happiness. Many psychologists mistakenly pay an unnecessary amount of attention to what has happened to an individual or why one might feel a certain way when attempting to eradicate negative thoughts and feelings. They try to make sense of past events and relationships within their lives to conclude reasoning for present-day suffering. While I agree that people can go through traumatic experiences that affect their thought system and in turn condition the subconscious into creating pain, it's untrue that reliving the trauma through conversation will somehow deliver them from suffering. I am not taking the position that counselors trained in this doctrine don't have any use because many people need help seeing or finding the past phenomena that is still affecting them today. On the other hand, individuals aware of the source of their pain can find themselves experiencing the events mentally all over again and reopening healed wounds. I believe all would agree that it is not the event or past action that is the primary source of suffering, but the present thoughts and feelings occupying the body and mind. The fact that the issue still drives their thoughts or thought system somehow is the reason for their current suffering. For example, I've never heard of anyone with Alzheimer's or amnesia suffering from depression associated with ideas they don't recall. When a person has taken on a new thought system, they disconnect from the feelings related to past thinking. To remove suffering, you must address what you are thinking, not necessarily why you're thinking it. When you train the mind to focus on the present moment, mental silence, depression, anxiety, and emotional suffering will be under your control. When the parasite acts as a judge or attacking the individual, it will inevitably focus on whatever hurts the most. Thus, complete freedom is only available in atonement. But remedies are available by changing the thought system. First, you can start repeating a statement like, I will think perfectly. The power in your words come from your divinity, but it is your faith, knowledge, and understanding that will bring it to pass. If you don't believe your thoughts have power, then they won't, because you are activating the law with what you believe, not just the words you recite at the moment. When making an affirming statement like, I will think perfectly, you are relying on law, intuition, insight, and revelation to assist in determining exactly how and what to think, so you don't have to worry about the details. God will provide them. Second, meditation will train you in how to pursue silence and stay awake to what exists. That will give individuals suffering from depression more control over their thoughts and the ability to create silence whenever they experience pain. Last is the acceptance that if you are listening to the brain rather than engaged in proactive thinking, it is likely the parasite feeding you information. When you come to this realization, you can immediately begin to detach from the thoughts, thereby decreasing the effect they have on your emotions. Many depressed people have lost hope because they believe their mind is broken or ill. Much of the reason depression feels like hopelessness is because individuals believe that they are hurting themselves. In actuality, they are in a prison of perpetual pain with the parasite acting as warden. When they reconstruct the thought system, they will be free.